Coming up with an MVP and trying something out helps you sort of fill in what's that middle step. That's where the concept of minimum viable product or minimum lovable product comes in. So the idea here is that without an MVP, a lot of times people think, oh, well, you're building a car. So first we're just going to build the frame and the wheels, and then we'll add the body, then the windows and everything else. That's actually not the right way to think about it. What they encourage you to do is think about like the Henry Ford problem. You want to get somewhere faster. Maybe the first thing you do is you give them rollerblades. They can get there a little faster. And then you do user research. How was it? Well, I got there faster, but I was, really tired. So you give them a scooter. And that was great, but one leg got tired, the other leg was fine. So you give them a bike. Oh, great, yeah, I'm able to use both legs now, but I have a bunch of cargo to carry. So now you motorize it. You give them a moped. Oh, that's great, but I'd like to carry a passenger. So now a car. So the idea with an MVP is you're learning every step of the way, but there's an assumption you're making again with this model that you're going, roller skate, scooter, bike. And what's the assumption you're making? You're also making an assumption that that the final answer is a car, that you know the best solution ahead of time. So I'd like to encourage you to think that prototyping isn't really a comparison of which build technique gets you there further. You're using the feedback to get you to what they need more. What you might find as you get to the scooter stage is that they actually need a truck because their cargo needs are heavier than their passenger needs. Constantly getting that feedback allows you to change what you're doing further off in the future to more tightly align that with what your users' needs are. The other thing is you don't know which one of these products might be the end game. You might have some car thing in mind, but each one of these could be a viable product in and of themselves. And what you might find out is that your audience loves the moped phase and they never need you to go to the car phase. So you just need to be aware that sometimes your plans are going to change based on that feedback. Going to go into a quick conversation about agile, epics, the backlog and all that good stuff, how that works with the product roadmap, using agile and product management to get what you want. So quick review. This isn't an agile class, but everyone should be familiar-ish enough with it to know that agile is time boxed. You use short iterations to compound and build a larger thing. You use these ceremonies such as sprint planning and retro to help keep the team aligned. So it's sometimes shown like this. You spend some time doing brainstorming and experimenting, and then you get to a build phase where you're still getting feedback and folding those new ideas in, but you are building it in a iterative loop where you're building something, getting feedback, revising it, getting feedback, et cetera, et cetera. When you start to add, things like pivots and change management, you start getting into the green loop here, where you start looking at ability to scale it and to other products being able to jump out of this initial product. Agile can have a way to be kind of focused so tightly that it loses track of the bigger picture. So what do you do? So the idea of a product roadmap helps you plan the future of your product while still being laser focused on what you're building right now. Road mapping is a technique used often in product management. The idea with road mapping is to figure out how your product is going to mature from now into the far-off future. One of the key points of road mapping is to understand that as the map moves out further to the right, it gets less and less specific. This reflects the agile methodology. You know exactly what you're doing for this sprint and likely the sprint after that and likely the sprint after that. But then as you go further out, you're not as sure as what you're building because you're waiting for insights from the research team to help give you an idea of the best course of action in later sprints. For example, in many roadmaps, you'll have your list of user stories and they're prioritized and you know exactly what the team is working on in the current sprint. In your next sprint, you're likely sprint planning and you're getting an idea of the stories that you want to put in that sprint. Same with your third and fourth sprints. After that, you're probably going to have ideas of features or things that you might want to test. You're not 100% sure what those are yet. And this is fine.
This is where you can put placeholders in the roadmap to say, this is what we're researching, and this is what we're hoping to learn about. As the research team comes back with insights, you can take those learnings and you can turn those into features, which you can turn into user stories. Road mapping is a very important technique for your product managers to understand what they're building. But it's also a very important tool for your sponsors, the project manager, executive sponsors, and other people involved to understand the thought process of what you're building now and what you're building in the future, and when their feature that they're really excited about seeing, when it might be coming down the pipeline, or the research that's necessary to know if their feature will work.
This is a really good book that I recommend, but a lot of the things that I've shown you are explained in this in more detail. The product roadmap, like your journey map, starts at the left and goes up to the right. The difference between a product roadmap and a journey map is that the product roadmap fills in the gap between what is and what could be, the as is and the to be. So on your product roadmap, this items on the left side of it, the items closer to today, you know exactly what you're building. And in fact, a lot of times your sprint plan is right there on the left. You know exactly what you're building the next sprint, the sprint after that, the sprint after that. You have a very good idea of all those things. However, as you get a little further off into the future, you have some story ideas, but you're also going to have some things that you're not 100% sure of yet. And that's where you send your user research team to look at things that you're considering doing in the next quarter, 3, 4, 5 months out, to find out, hey, if we did this, would our users, would our target audience, would they like this? How could we build this so that it would be the most enjoyable user experience? When they bring that research back, you can start turning those ideas and breaking them down into actual stories of how you would build that feature. The further out you get, the less you have stories and the more you have ideas that are just placeholders for things that you want to research later. So product roadmaps are, like I said, are very specific in the first, month, 2 months, quarter at the left. But then as you go further and further to the right, they're more quarterly goals, objectives, things you want to research and things you want to explore. And then as that future gets closer to today, your research team has helped you turn them from ideas into what's reality.